I took my sick husband to the doctor, but what the doctor told me made my blood freeze. I'm Nicole Harper, and at 46, I thought I had finally cracked the code to happiness. Here in Cedar Falls, Wisconsin, where autumn leaves paint the streets gold and neighbors still bring casseroles when someone's sick, I'd built what I thought was the perfect life. After growing up bouncing between foster homes across 3 states, stability meant everything to me. For 8 years, I'd poured my soul into my job as Human Resources Director at Midwest Medical Supply. It wasn't glamorous, managing employee benefits and resolving workplace drama, but it was mine. My colleagues respected me, calling me the backbone of our 200-person operation. I'd earned every promotion through late nights and weekend calls, proving that a girl from the system could make something of herself. My boss, David Thompson, a soft-spoken man in his 50s who'd lost his wife to cancer 2 years prior, had become my closest friend. During those grueling inventory seasons, he'd slide a Starbucks across my desk with a knowing smile. "You're burning the candle at both ends again, Nicole," he'd say, concern creasing his weathered face. At 44, I was content being single. My modest ranch house on Maple Street was my sanctuary, quiet evenings with mystery novels and Sunday mornings sleeping in. But loneliness has a way of creeping in during Wisconsin's long winters. That's when I joined Harmony Connections, an upscale matchmaking service downtown. That's how I met Robertson. Robbie was 49, with salt and pepper hair and laugh lines that spoke of a life well lived. He worked as a supervisor at Peterson Logistics, divorced with no kids, perfect for someone like me who'd never felt the maternal pull. Our first coffee date at Brewster's Cafe stretched into 4 hours. We talked about everything: weekend road trips to Door County, our shared love of classic rock, dreams of retirement somewhere warm. Our courtship was beautifully ordinary. Saturday morning farmers market runs, Thursday night bowling league, quiet dinners at Romano's Italian Bistro where he'd order chicken parmesan and I'd steal bites of his tiramisu. When he proposed 6 months later, a simple solitaire ring over takeout Chinese food in my living room, I cried happy tears for the first time since childhood. We married at the Milwaukee County Courthouse on a crisp October morning. No fuss, no family drama, just us and 2 witnesses from the clerk's office. I wore a navy dress from Macy's, he wore his best suit. David congratulated me when I returned to work Monday morning, though I caught something flickering in his eyes, maybe loneliness, maybe loss. I was too busy floating on cloud 9 to dwell on it. Life as newlyweds felt like the fairy tale I'd never dared dream of. Robbie moved into my house, and we shared my Honda Accord since his old Ford pickup had died the previous winter. I didn't mind. I loved my job too much to relocate, and Robbie seemed happy to let me take the lead on practical matters. For 18 beautiful months, everything was perfect. Robbie would kiss my forehead each morning before I left for work, have dinner waiting when I returned. He was steady, dependable, the kind of man who made you feel safe in a dangerous world. I never imagined that safety was an illusion, and the man I trusted most would become my worst nightmare. The changes started small, like hairline cracks in a seemingly solid foundation. About a year and a half into our marriage, Robbie began sleeping later, stumbling to the kitchen in his Green Bay Packers sweatshirt with dark circles under his eyes. He'd sit at our breakfast table, staring at his coffee like it held the answers to life's mysteries. "You okay, honey?" I'd ask, adjusting my blazer before heading to work. He'd nod slowly, but something was off. The man who used to wake up humming classic rock songs now moved like he was walking through molasses. At first, I chalked it up to winter blues. Wisconsin's February cold could drain anyone's spirit. But spring arrived, and Robbie didn't bounce back. He'd forget to take out the trash on Wednesdays, leave the milk on the counter, wear the same clothes 3 days running. When I gently suggested he might want a shower, he'd look at me with confusion, as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. "I showered yesterday," he'd insist, though I knew it had been 4 days. The man who once grilled perfect bratwurst for our Saturday gatherings now burned frozen pizza. He'd stand in our kitchen, spatula in hand, looking lost in his own home. When our neighbor Jerry waved from his yard, Robbie would stare right through him like Jerry was invisible. Work became my escape. I'd arrive early, stay late, throwing myself into employee wellness programs and budget reviews. Anything to avoid going home to the stranger wearing my husband's face. David noticed my longer hours. "Everything all right at home?" he asked one Thursday evening, finding me still at my desk at 7 p.m., reviewing insurance claims. "Just busy season," I lied, not ready to admit that my perfect marriage was crumbling. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in April. I found Robbie in our garage at 6 a.m., fully dressed but sitting in our Honda with the engine off, keys in his lap. "Robbie, what are you doing?" He looked at me with hollow eyes. "I was going to work, but I can't remember how to get there." My heart shattered. Peterson Logistics was 4 miles away, the same route he'd driven for 3 years. I called his supervisor, Dave Martinez, explaining that Robbie was feeling under the weather. Dave's concern was genuine. Robbie had been their most reliable employee. That afternoon, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Sarah Kim at Cedar Falls Family Health. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee, plastic chairs arranged around a television playing morning talk shows. Robbie sat beside me, fidgeting with his wedding ring, occasionally muttering to himself. Dr. Kim was thorough: blood work, cognitive tests, questions about family history. After 3 visits, she delivered her diagnosis with professional compassion. "Mr. Chen appears to be experiencing major depressive disorder, possibly with early signs of cognitive decline. We'll start him on antidepressants and schedule regular follow-ups." Depression. The word hit me like a sledgehammer. I'd researched it online, reading about chemical imbalances and environmental triggers. But knowing the clinical definition didn't make watching my husband disappear any easier. Robbie's condition deteriorated rapidly. He quit his job, unable to concentrate on shipping schedules and inventory reports. Our savings account became our lifeline as I carried the financial burden alone. Some nights, I'd find him standing at our bedroom window, staring at nothing, tears streaming down his face. "I'm broken, Nicole," he'd whisper. "You deserve better than this shell of a man." I'd hold him close, promising we'd get through it together. But deep down, terror was taking root. Was I losing him forever? The morning I stepped outside to find our driveway empty, my world tilted sideways. Our Honda Accord, reliable, paid off. The car that had taken us on weekend trips to Wisconsin Dells had vanished into thin air. I circled the house twice, checking the street, the alley behind our fence, even knocking on Jerry's door to ask if he'd seen anything suspicious. Nothing. I found Robbie in our kitchen, stirring sugar into already sweetened coffee, his movements mechanical and distant. "Robbie, where's the car?" He looked up with genuine confusion, his brown eyes foggy. "What car?" "Our Honda. It was in the driveway last night." He shrugged, returning to his coffee. "Maybe you moved it?" The casual dismissal felt like a slap. I'd driven that car home from work the previous evening, parked it in the exact same spot I had for years. Now it was gone, and my husband, the only other person with keys, acted like it had never existed. I called Metrobus to get to work, arriving 2 hours late and frazzled. David met me at the elevator, concern etched across his face. "Nicole, you look terrible. What happened?" "Someone stole our car," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He walked me to my office, closing the door behind us. "Did you call the police?" I nodded, though I hadn't yet. The idea of filing a report, of making this nightmare official, felt too overwhelming. David seemed to read my hesitation. "I'll drive you to the station during lunch," he offered. "And you can borrow my pickup truck until you get this sorted out." His kindness almost broke me. I spent the morning mechanically processing payroll, my mind spinning with questions. Who would steal a 10-year-old Honda from our quiet neighborhood? And why couldn't I shake the feeling that Robbie knew more than he was letting on? The second blow came 3 days later at First National Bank. I'd stopped by during my lunch break to deposit my paycheck and withdraw cash for groceries. The teller, a sweet college girl named Amy, handed back my debit card with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Chun, but this account shows a 0 balance." "That's impossible. I have direct deposit." Amy's fingers danced across her keyboard, her expression growing more troubled. "It looks like several large withdrawals were made this week. The account was cleared out on Tuesday." Tuesday. The same day our car disappeared. My hands shook as I checked our joint savings account, the one containing our emergency fund, vacation money, and the nest egg I'd carefully built over 8 years of steady employment. Also empty. Every penny, gone. Who authorized these withdrawals? I asked, though my stomach already knew the answer. Robert Chun. He's listed as a joint account holder. The bank's fluorescent lights seemed too bright, the air too thin. Robbie had access to our joint savings, but not my personal checking account. How had he managed to drain both? And more importantly, why? I drove David's truck home in a daze, my mind reeling. First the car, now our money. Was this some bizarre symptom of Robbie's depression? Or was something darker happening under my own roof? That evening, I found Robbie exactly where I'd left him that morning, on our living room couch, staring at a television program about Antarctic penguins. He didn't acknowledge my entrance, didn't ask about my day, didn't seem to notice that I'd arrived in a different vehicle. "Robbie, we need to talk about the bank accounts." He turned to me with that same vacant expression. "What about them?" The innocence in his voice chilled me to the bone. Dr. Kim's referral letter felt heavy in my hands as Robbie and I sat in the waiting room at Mercy General Hospital. The psychiatric unit was on the 3rd floor, a place I'd never imagined visiting. Families clustered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones while CNN played silently on wall-mounted televisions. Robbie slouched beside me, wearing the same flannel shirt he'd had on for 3 days. His beard had grown scraggly, and he smelled faintly of unwashed skin. I tried to get him to shower that morning, but he'd insisted he was clean enough. The man who once prided himself on his appearance now looked like someone who'd given up on life entirely. "Mr. Chen." A nurse appeared, clipboard in hand. "Dr. Elizabeth Martinez will see you now." Robbie shuffled forward, his movements slow and deliberate. I settled into my chair with a dog-eared copy of People magazine, trying to distract myself with celebrity gossip and recipes I'd never make. 20 minutes passed. 30. I was halfway through an article about royal wedding preparations when the same nurse returned. "Mrs. Chen, Dr. Martinez would like to speak with you." My stomach dropped. In all our previous appointments, doctors had spoken to us together. Why did she need to see me alone? Dr. Martinez's office was cramped but comfortable, diplomas covering one wall and family photos scattered across her desk. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes and prematurely gray hair pulled into a professional bun. "Please sit down," she said, her voice carrying an undertone I couldn't identify. "Is this about Robbie's treatment plan?" I asked, settling into the leather chair across from her desk. Dr. Martinez leaned forward, her hands clasped. "Nicole, I need to ask you something important. How well do you know your husband's medical history?" The question caught me off guard. "Pretty well, I think. He had appendicitis in his 20s, broke his wrist in high school, the usual stuff." "Why? What about his psychiatric history?" "He never mentioned any. He said the depression started after we got married, maybe work stress or—" "Nicole," Dr. Martinez interrupted gently, "I treated Robert 5 years ago. He was brought to our emergency room after what his then-girlfriend described as a complete mental breakdown. But it wasn't depression." My heart began racing. "What do you mean?" Robert was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic features. He'd been systematically stealing from his girlfriend, emptying her accounts, selling her belongings, manipulating her emotional state to cover his tracks. When she finally confronted him, he flew into a rage and put his fist through her kitchen window. That's how he got the scar on his right hand. I knew that scar. Robbie had always said it came from a childhood accident with a broken bottle. Dr. Martinez continued, her voice steady but urgent. The girlfriend, Patricia Williams, told us he'd been faking various illnesses to gain her sympathy and throw off suspicion. First it was chronic fatigue, then anxiety, finally what appeared to be early-onset dementia. He's extremely skilled at manipulation, Nicole. The room felt like it was spinning. You're saying he's not really depressed? Its pickup truck, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. Dr. Martinez's words echoed in my head like a broken record. Antisocial personality disorder, systematic theft, 18 months in jail. The man I'd married, the man I'd trusted with my heart and my future, was a lie wrapped in flannel shirts and fake smiles. But I needed proof. Dr. Martinez could be wrong. Maybe she'd confused Robbie with someone else. Maybe the scar came from a different accident. Maybe there was an explanation that didn't shatter everything I believed about my marriage. That night, while Robbie slept his unnaturally deep sleep, I researched security cameras on my laptop. Amazon offered dozens of options, tiny devices that looked like alarm clocks, picture frames, even phone chargers. I ordered a 4-camera system with my credit card, paying extra for overnight shipping. Just in case, I whispered to myself, though my heart was already hardening into certainty. The cameras arrived the next afternoon. I called in sick, the first time in 3 years, and spent the day strategically placing them around our house. One in the living room, disguised as a digital clock on the bookshelf. Another in the kitchen, hidden inside a fake plant David had given me for my birthday. The third went in our bedroom, tucked behind my jewelry box. The fourth covered the front hallway. Each camera connected to an app on my phone, streaming live footage I could monitor from work. I felt like a character in one of my mystery novels, except this was my real life unraveling in high definition. For 4 days, nothing happened. Robbie maintained his routine of sleeping late, shuffling around the house in his underwear, staring at daytime television. I began to wonder if I was losing my mind, if grief and stress had made me paranoid. Then came Tuesday morning. I was at work. With his prior conviction, he's looking at serious prison time. As the police cars pulled away, I stood in my empty driveway, holding divorce papers and feeling something I hadn't expected, relief. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. The nightmare was over. Now came the hard part, rebuilding my life from the ashes of his lies. 6 months later, I sat in Judge Harrison's courtroom, watching the gavel fall on the final chapter of my marriage to Robert Chun. The divorce decree was official. I was free. Robbie sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his lawyer shuffling papers with the resigned air of someone fighting a losing battle. The criminal trial had been swift. With my video evidence, the pawn shop receipts, and testimony from Dr. Martinez about his previous conviction, the jury took less than 2 hours to find him guilty on all counts. 2 to 5 years in state prison, not enough to undo the damage he'd caused, but enough to ensure he couldn't hurt anyone else for a while. I didn't look at him as I left the courthouse. That chapter of my life was closed, and I refused to give him another moment of my attention. Rebuilding wasn't easy. The stolen money was partially recovered, but legal fees and lost time at work had taken their toll. I'd moved into a smaller apartment on the east side of town, a cozy 2-bedroom with hardwood floors and windows that actually let in sunlight. It felt like starting over at 46, but for the first time in years, I was excited about my future. Work became my anchor again. I threw myself into a company wellness initiative, organizing stress management workshops and employee support groups. My experience with Robbie had given me unexpected insight into recognizing manipulation and supporting victims of emotional abuse. David noticed the change in my approach. "You're different," he said one Thursday afternoon, finding me in the break room organizing materials for a domestic violence awareness seminar. Stronger somehow. I looked up from my pamphlets and smiled. I survived something I never thought I could. It changes you. David had been my rock throughout the ordeal, driving me to court appointments, lending me his truck, never asking for details but always being available when I needed support. He'd grown quieter lately, more thoughtful, and I'd caught him looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Nicole," he said, sitting across from me at the small table. "I know this might be terrible timing, but I can't keep pretending I don't have feelings for you." My heart skipped. "David, I've watched you go through hell this past year, and you've handled it with more grace than anyone should have to. You're incredible." And he paused, running his hands through his graying hair. "I think I'm falling in love with you." The confession hung between us like morning mist. David wasn't Robert. He was steady, honest, someone who'd proven his character through years of friendship and months of unwavering support. The idea of trusting another man terrified me, but it also filled me with a warmth I'd forgotten existed. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I know. And I'm not asking you to jump into anything. But maybe we could start with dinner? Something that's not work-related or crisis management." I thought about it for a long moment, weighing fear against possibility. Robert had tried to destroy me, but he'd failed. I was still here, still capable of love and trust and hope. "Dinner sounds perfect," I said, meaning it. As David's face lit up with a smile, I realized something important. I wasn't just surviving anymore. For the first time in over a year, I was truly living. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone break you. And I was far from broken.